if there's a theme where your business doesn't give you the freedom to step away and go from really operator to the owner mentality, or you're not working towards that, personal philosophy is that something's off, because you should be building a business that works for you. And while you can pour more into it, if you can't step away and give yourself the gift of a week off and an awesome trip and putting Slack away, putting your computer away, what are you doing?
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. And in this episode, I have a near and dear friend that's not only helped me on a personal fulfillment and enjoyment level, but has helped me optimize my business when it comes to expenses. Every single business owner that I know and the dozens that he's helped in my network has helped them actually optimize their spend using the right credit cards and actually using travel points and credit card points the right way to not only save money, but also have amazing trips. And he's helped hundreds of entrepreneurs actually do this now. And so with that, my good friend, Eli, what's up, man?
Thanks for having me in. Always good to be in Miami and excited to dive into credit card points and travel and how people can create an amazing lifestyle while building the business they're on.
Absolutely, man. And so it's a very interesting niche that you found yourself in. And, for those that don't know how you could even get into a niche like this of optimizing spend, let's kind of take it back to how did you even get into this space in the first place?
Sure. So I'll take you back to really my senior year graduating college. So I'm a finance degree. I have a bunch of friends that are really successful already in college, as in the finance industry and accounting industry, and they're going to work for the Big Four. They're going to Wall Street. They're going to make 100 to 150K right out of the gate in school, which is pretty good for your first year out of college. But I always had the entrepreneurial pull, and I had this desire to create something that was mine, something that I actually cared about, something that could give me a little more autonomy and the ability to really dig my hands in and build something. And what ended up happening is I found myself working for this international tour company. I was the first employee, and the founders who I knew were basically like, hey, you get to be an entrepreneur in this business, build it however you really think you can, come up with your strategies, innovations, all that stuff. So I had this desire for passion, and I now am building this company. But during that time, all my friends were taking these awesome trips, and specifically there was one big trip to Thailand when I'm like 22 years old, and I get a text from a friend, and they're like, yo, we're going to Thailand, everyone's going to be joining, can't wait to see you there. And I realized I couldn't go because I didn't have enough money. I didn't have the cash. And so even at this point, I'm building a company, I'm hustling, I'm driving Uber, I'm coaching baseball lessons, I'm doing all this stuff, and things just hadn't clicked in the business yet.
Yeah.
So points was the way for me to first create a little bit of freedom to continue to pursue the dream that I had while not passing up on the things I really wanted to do with the friends and the people that I cared about. So it opened my eyes there, and then the thing that became like a necessity for that trip became kind of like a fun hobby. I'd be the guy at a dinner, everyone's like pulling out their credit cards. I'm like, get that card out of here. Use this card. So I was like the annoying friend like that. And then it became a little more than that. It was really this kind of obsession. I'm just reading all the blogs, reading all the articles, spending hundreds of hours with no intent of building a business. So as that kind of unfolded, it became a really valuable skill set. And then I did start consulting people and eventually just ramped up into this whole brand. And we have a 15-person team now. And as you mentioned, we're helping entrepreneurs of all sizes all over the country really maximize the money that they're already spending so they can have the experiences that they get to look back on throughout their life while they're building their business, instead of waiting 30 years or 40 years until they're 60 or 70 to take those trips. So that's the kind of the background story and where we're at.
That's awesome, man. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, where it's actually compressing time. Instead of waiting 30 to 40 years to go take that trip to Europe or Asia or Thailand, whatever, you actually do that a lot sooner by just leveraging what you are doing in your business already. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and I fell victim to this in the beginning, where you're so focused on the craft, you're so focused on scaling the business and the operations and that you don't even think about this whole side that unlocks new perspective. It unlocks culture, it unlocks life, and gives you more of a well-rounded kind of perspective on people and on things, and even your own business model.
Totally. I mean, you nailed it on the head. I think there's a belief shift that happens for a lot of people when they realize this. Because most people that are driving towards business, if you're not purely just creating a lifestyle business and you're creating something maybe that's a little bit bigger, has a bigger implication to it, a lot of people just, in their mind, they start to put off those experiences of that's for the future. And, I'm a huge believer in taking those trips now, not just because they're fun and they're cool experiences even, but like you're saying, they make you a better person. You understand the world better. You become a better leader. You come back with a fresh perspective, and getting out of your environment, getting out of the everyday, the place where you have the normal desk and your routine, all this stuff, and you get out of that, you come back innately with new ideas, new perspectives, better energy, you treat people better. And, we were talking about this earlier, but I also find myself when I'm really engaged with someone at a party or a dinner, an event, I'm like, oh, this person is really well, like it just happens that usually the most interesting people are also very well traveled. They have the most perspectives and stories and cool things to talk about. And so if you want to just be an interesting person that, is an attractive person and a cool leader, that is also a big factor of it too.
Yeah, that helps you with business, helps you with dating.
Totally. Yeah.
Helps you with your family, just like applying a different perspective or just really being interesting.
100%.
And I think it's really cool too, especially because that whole laptop lifestyle thing went viral because of Ty Lopez and all this stuff in 2016, 2017. But there was no, at least for me, way out of staying in the laptop because you're so focused on the service of the business. Whereas with leveraging the points and leveraging the time and money that you're already spending on building this stuff into the actual experiences you're supposed to get with laptop lifestyle, that's what makes the difference. And I mean, even this past year before New Year's, I had traveled up to New York fully on points, awesome hotel, went to all the cool places downtown, and that was all from points and some of the optimizations that we did.
Totally. Yeah, I'm a big believer of like, if you're building a business, and there's different stages of different businesses, like there's different seasons where travel's gonna be easier or harder. But if there's a theme where your business doesn't give you the freedom to step away and go from really operator to the owner mentality, or you're not working towards that, personal philosophy is that something's off, because you should be building a business that works for you. And while you can pour more into it, if you can't step away and give yourself the gift of a week off and an awesome trip and putting Slack away or putting your computer away, what are you doing? Like to me, that's a big pillar of creating a life that you actually really enjoy fully. And so again, I totally am also recognizing there's seasons for things. Like there's times where I'm like, these next 3 months probably shouldn't be going to Thailand or Bali. Like, there's a time and a place, but I think it's a core thing to keep in your mind as a part of your values if you have this craving for wanting to creating a fully experienced life.
Well, to that point as well, it's like the justification of the trip. It doesn't have to be a big cash expense. Like maybe going out to Europe or whatever was like 15, 30, 40 grand, whatever it was. And when you look at it, you're like, right now I can actually build with that. I can go spend that on advertising, or I can go spend that here in content or whatever. But the point system that we'll talk about in a bit is to optimize that stuff and already leverage what you've been building so you can go take that trip, and obviously at the right time, of course. And so for maybe people that aren't doing a lot of business stuff yet, let's first start with people maybe that are working 9 to 5 or even just getting kind of started with credit. Let's talk about what they can actually take away with points and what they can actually do to actually tap into this. And then we'll talk about the business owners that are spending $300, $400 and up $1,000 per year. And we can kind of say how we can optimize those stuff.
Totally. And I think it's a great starting point because that's exactly where I was. And sometimes it can feel frustrating. You're like, well, I don't have enough spend like a business owner yet. How am I going to do these kinds of things? This only applies for them. And it's a little bit almost defeating.
Yeah.
And I was there. I thought the same thing. I'm no longer in that position. I do have a business. But even when I was in that, I figured out the right strategy. So the kind of core underpinnings of this, number one, foundations. You got to understand your credit report and how that works, because before you take action on getting new cards, you should know generally how the credit score works, and we can get into that if we need to. But the main idea here is that opening more cards doesn't necessarily mean your credit is just going to tank, right? There's different factors that can impact your credit score, and particularly getting business credit cards, even if you don't have like an established LLC, but getting them as a sole proprietor, using your social security number as the EIN when you apply, will allow you to get credit cards that don't show up on your credit report. Now, you are still, as a business owner, personally guaranteeing that debt. So you can't just like default and be like, oh, it's on the business. No, it's going to come back to you. But when it comes to like the utilization, the balances you carry and all that stuff in the average age, not going to show up on the credit report if it's applied for as a sole proprietor.
Interesting.
So you can get bonus cards, sign up bonuses from these cards, even if you don't spend a ton. That's one of the fastest ways to get a good chunk of points. That's not going to be a super highly sustainable strategy over like several years, but if you want to get, a few 100,000, 200, 300, 400, even up to like 500,000 points a year, you could do that off of bonuses alone. And if you know the credit score strategies, you can do that in a way where you keep your credit really clean. So that's kind of the first piece. But like we were talking about a little bit with points, there's a very similar analogy to how business works. In a business, if you want more profit or more value out of the business, you can either increase revenue or decrease expenses, or ideally you do both, and that increases profitability. With points, same thing. You can either increase how many points you have and how many you earn, or you can become more effective at utilizing those resources, aka points, to get more value. So ideally, you want to do both. You want to earn more points through bonuses and everyday spending, and you want to use them more effectively, which we can get into. That's the meat and potatoes here, to create the most value. So even if you're a 9 to 5er, the bonuses are going to be a high play for you. And then the key is going to be, when you do go to use them, really make sure that you're getting good value. Because if you're not, you're going to run through all your points, and then it's going to take you a while to build back up. Someone like yourself or business owners that are spending more, they replenish much faster, right? They have a lot more points flowing through. So if they dump them on one trip. It's still not a good idea because it's wasteful, but it's not going to like ruin their entire stash of trips and make them, out of points for a year, whereas a 9-to-5er may have that situation. So those are kind of the overarching themes that you want to be thinking about if you're in a 9-to-5 situation. But the key main point is that you can absolutely do it, and you can definitely be taking at least a few big international trips, business and first class, every year, hands down, even if you don't have a big business.
Yeah, and so to kind of equate that to a cash position, we talked about you can get about 500,000 points in a single year if you're utilizing some of the strategies of the 9-to-5er. In a traditional way, that'd be only worth about $5,000, right? Because it's 1 cent per point, right?
Correct.
But the strategies that you deploy, it's typically 2 cents or 4 cents or heck, even 10, 15 cents. So you get 10x the value or 15x the value in some cases. And so your trips go further, your points go further, and the spend that you're doing day to day goes way further, right?
Exactly it. So that's the formula right there. You want to take how much you're spending every month. You want to multiply, if you're trying to get the math of this, you want to take that, you want to multiply by how many points you should be earning on average. And then you would multiply that times the cent per point. And so that is the key, because I'll just use an example, right? So I flew on Emirates first class to Dubai last year, and this was a crazy experience. It's got a bar, it's got caviar, Dom Perignon, there's a shower on board, there's a crazy lounge. Like, I'm like, is showering at 35,000 feet necessary? Absolutely not. Is it amazing? Hell yeah, it's freaking sick. It's so cool. I had an espresso martini in a shower in the sky. I was like, what is this? But here's the idea, right? So that trip cost $14,500 one way per person in first class. Really expensive. I don't care how much money I have, I'm probably never going to want to pay for that. If I went to Amex Travel, this is what most people do with points. I'm going through the bank portal or the bank's travel site. They give you 1 cent per point. That's the base value of a point. So that would mean that trip is 1.45 million points, which is a lot.
It's on points.
Good amount of points. But with the whole ability to transfer points, and this is the magic sauce, is being able to take your points from the bank and to convert them into the right airline or hotel programs to book that travel. This trip, instead of being 1.45 million points, was 136,000 points, and I paid $500 out of pocket. So
wow,
I could have gotten 10 flights at a $15,000 value roughly for the same amount of points that most people are getting one in that case. So that's what I'm talking about when I say get the best value. That's what I mean. And it doesn't just have to be crazy Emirates first class flights. It could be, it could be Miami to New York. It could be Miami to LA. It could be within Europe or Asia or anything like that. You can do it in economy. You can do it in first class. The biggest value is going to be on those international first class tickets. But it works across the board, hotels and airlines.
Yeah, that's insane. First off, like that, if you guys are taking notes, I'm sure that you need to rewatch that or replay that back, because that is such a really interesting point, as well as people are probably going to look up Dubai flights now.
Yeah.
Can I get a first
exactly.
Right. That sounds awesome. So when it comes to the business owner side, I mean, we spend multiple six figures per month on ads, or we'll spend, a lot on operations. So let's kind of shift the gear towards what can business owners do that already have the established business and the established lines, but just probably haven't looked at it. Because when I first got started, I was like, yeah, I got Amex points. Yeah, I got, rewards over here. I got cash back over here. Kind of what's the optimal strategy, or how do you approach building the optimal strategy for the business owner?
Yeah, so I mean, there's different ways to go about it based on the individual, because the strategy really should be tailored towards their spending, their amount, and their ideal travel goals, right? Someone that lives in Miami and has family in New York and family in Dallas is going to have a very different setup than someone that lives in LA and is going to Asia to go visit their plant in China, right? There's a different strategy because the points can be used differently. But overall philosophy here is you're going to focus less on the bonus cards. Like, those are still great. Everyone likes free money, obviously. But the best thing is going to be to maximize that everyday spending category. Okay, so you want to increase the floor of your earnings, meaning there's bonus categories, right? So ads are a bonus, flights are a bonus, hotels are a bonus, shipping can be a bonus, cell phones, all that stuff, software. But then there's also things you might buy from, if you run an e-commerce business, you might be buying inventory, right? That's not a bonus category. So you want to take that from 1 point per dollar to 2. So you want to get a card that's going to earn at least 2 points per dollar. The Capital One Venture X for Business would be a great one for business owners, because it's going to give you 2 points per dollar. So now you've just doubled the amount of points you're earning at a base rate on every type of purchase. Then you want to layer in getting the right cards for the right bonus expenses. You're talking about ads, right? So you're spending a lot on ads. So the first 150,000 on the Amex Business Gold will get you a 4 point per dollar bonus. But what do you do for the next one? So you want to have that layered in to have the right cards, so you're fully maximizing the potential of that. And that's going to be the main focus right there. You still want to make sure you're getting good value out of the points, because that is like the the way that you really accelerate this whole system. But if you don't have the right cards in place first, then you're just wasting opportunity every single month that you're spending money, and this adds up quick. So that's the main idea.
Yeah. So just to kind of recap that, it's a layered strategy where a card is dedicated to either a group of expenses or a dedicated expense. So
Correct.
Amex Gold, it's pretty well known that one goes really far for ads. But then other ones can be for different expense items. So they don't all get the same spend. It's just a matter of, hey, where can I maximize the spend I am allocating to get either the best point value or cashback value or whatever the case is, right?
Right, totally. And then there's the lifestyle upgrade piece, which is about status.
Okay.
And that's where you may have like the Amex Platinum card, right? That's not really, especially the personal Platinum, not really a good card for almost any category of spend. Most people have it because it's flashy. You know, it's marketed the heaviest. It has a really high annual fee. And most people assume, well, it's the most expensive. It must be the best, right? It's kind of like in marketing. Sometimes people are like, just raise your prices, more people will buy it because like if it's perceived as higher value.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same with the Platinum card, but what they're really good at for that card is like the benefits. So you get different statuses complimentary. You get Centurion Lounge access. You get Delta lounges when you fly Delta. You get Uber credits. You get fine hotels and resorts credits and perks. So that's going to be like the kind of thing for lifestyle upgrades where you may have that card, not for the bonus category of spend, but for the lifestyle perks. The same goes with, you know, you can spend your way to status with different airlines or different hotels. So you may have certain cards, not because the points are the most valuable ones that you're earning, but because the status that you're going to get through hitting those spend criterias is going to give you a huge ROI. And that's a massive unlock because then you can combine using points with status for like extra benefits.
Yeah. And so for those that don't know what status is in the points game, that's basically being able to be upgraded to certain hotel rooms complimentary or being able to get first class or first boarding on certain flights. And it's essentially just your loyalty to the brand, right?
Correct. So I'll give you a quick story, right? So this is how points started my relationship that I'm now in to live with an amazing woman. And when we first met last August, we were kind of just kicking things off. We were not like officially yet, but like there was some chemistry going on. And I'm like, this girl's great. But I'm going to Europe for a month. And I'm like, shit, like this kind of sucks. That's a terrible way to start a relationship. It's like you start connecting really well. And we both live in Austin. And then I'm like, I'm going to be gone for a month. So we get to the trip. I'm sitting there. I'm like, I should send her a message and see if she can come to Europe. So I'm like, hey, just checking. Like, perhaps if I could bring out to Europe, would you be interested in that? She's like, yeah. So I'm like, cool. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, maybe we were a little early, so I was like, maybe it'd be too much. I don't want to like, you know, be like looking desperate or something like that. So I was like, okay, let's bring her out. So I end up doing all the points research. We fly her out, and I found this resort called Seven Pines Resort in Sardinia, Italy. So it's this beautiful Italian island right in the middle of the Mediterranean, like freaking incredible. Luxury resort, 5-star, like unbelievable villas. It's insane.
Okay.
And so for this one, right, I used Chase points and I converted them into Hyatt. Now, I used 135,000 points, which would normally get you $1,300.
Yeah.
1,300. And because I used points effectively and I have status, I got upgraded into a 2-bedroom villa that was worth $3,250 a night. So we got free breakfast, all these perks. We got 4 nights there. So instead of getting $1,300 worth of value, I got $13,000 worth of value off of the same points. And that was because I had status with Hyatt already through spending on the right card. So I used points and status to get this upgrade. And then it was like, you know, it was like an awesome way to bring this girl over and be like, here's what I'm providing.
Talk about setting the frame.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, this is the life.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's a good point and a good example of points typically has, or at least prior to me jumping in with you guys on it, the stigma of like, oh, I'm going to get the worst flight. I'm going to get I'm doing this the cheap way. I'm just going to pay for it. And a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, when you start making money, you will throw 30 grand on a trip to Europe and you go do this stuff. But it's also, as you said, like you get the status upgrades where, hey, I didn't have to spend at all what you spent. I even had a better trip than what I could have planned for and stuff just based off of that. So let's talk about the mindset there a little bit around points. Let's address that.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I see it a lot. And usually it's just a little bit of naivete and a lot of entrepreneurs are pretty hard charging. They think they know everything, myself included. And so you gotta be soft with being like, hey man, like you're really being really wasteful right now. You're spending all this money on travel. And some people use it as a flex. Even they'll be like, I make so much, I can just spend 20 grand on a flight. I'm like, cool, you can, but that's a dumb move if there's a much easier, efficient way to do it. And so that's why I call this the lifestyle gold mine, because you're already spending the money. And when you do this right, you're spending the money through the business, and that Europe trip is probably a personal expense. So let's call it a $30,000 trip. Normally what happens if you're running a business, you're taking a distribution for the company. Let's say you take $30K out of the company because you're like, I'm going to take this trip. You pay 25% in taxes maybe, right? So now you just paid, I'm not great at math on the spot like that, but what is that, $7,500 in taxes?
And if you need 30, then you're paying yourself basically 40 grand to take a 30 grand trip.
Exactly. So if you use points, not only is the trip free, but you can take that cash, keep it in the business, invest in other assets or building the team or whatever you need to do. And then there's no tax implications. So it's not like you're paying tax on the trip, and it's a personal trip, and the points were generated from the business side. So there's like double dipping on that, where it makes so much sense when you think of it like that. And so, I'm a big fan of, there might be some occasions where it doesn't make sense to use points because you have a really important meeting and you need to fly direct and you need to fly first class and there's no good point options available. Okay, maybe you pay cash for that. But if that's going from every single trip you're doing like that to 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10, massive upgrade, massive savings, and better experiences.
Yeah, I would say it's been about, for me at least, maybe 1 or 2 out of every 5 trips I've taken, I've just gone cash or the card or whatever, just because of the timing and stuff. But then that also, it makes itself its own game of, hey, let's go actually plan this ahead. Let's actually set some goals and targets on these quarterly offsites, or let's figure out a really cool creative way to bring the whole team out, or just something that's more efficient instead of just dropping cash, because you can leverage cash in so many ways, whether that be getting more credit products because your cash balance is high, or even just better when you go get loans or whatever the case is. You can use cash more strategically, so it's not that that stigma of I'm trying to be cheap. It's no, cash can actually open up other avenues of investing in assets or growing your business, etc. And the points can be the incentive of travel and the incentive of hitting business targets. Yeah,
we actually have a client, you probably know Alaric Heck, runs YouTube ads, the YouTube ads guy.
You can't get away from it.
Yeah. Once you're in his funnel, you're there forever. Alaric will find you in your dreams and be like, here I am.
We got some dinner out in Austin. We had an awesome sushi spot. It was like me and a couple other people.
Okay.
So shout out Alec.
Okay. Amazing. So, but as an example, right? So he's really smart. He's spending a lot on YouTube ads. So he's got a ton of points. But really strategically, he was like, okay, well, what if I could leverage this for like once a quarter, I put my employee of the month on, an epic trip. And so our team will help plan that with them. But basically, instead of maybe giving a $5,000 bonus, which you get cash, goes in the account, employee's happy, cool, you give a $15,000 trip. Now, what do you have as a business owner? You put the cash somewhere else, like you're saying, and you have an employee who is taking something that is worth 3 times what you were going to give them to them, and you have the emotional piece of it too. They've gone on this experience. They went with their loved ones. When they come back, they're going to remember that, and that's going to be in their mind and really just something they really appreciate in you as a business owner for giving them, if there's someone who obviously likes to travel. But it's just a different way of thinking about, hey, there's more ways to use this and more strategies available as a business owner if you want to be efficient with how you're optimizing your spending. So that's what that Alaric does, and a lot of people even have their assistant learn this stuff or take this on and be the middleman, and that way the entrepreneur can just like have that asset on the team of like, you have this knowledge and I want you to do this for me. And that's another kind of play to think about as a business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. So that aligns incentives. And honestly, the cash thing is cool. Like, don't get me wrong, everyone likes making money, but not everyone's motivated by money. And I even have had, you've seen just through our Slack channel how many team members I've had kind of rotate in and out of there. And dude, I've overpaid in some examples. I've given them bonuses when they hit a certain thing. Cash isn't always the incentive. It is that emotional side where it's, hey, I wouldn't even have thought that I could do this way, or didn't even think that was an option with you as the business owner. I thought I was just going to be this virtual person that couldn't, interact with a human or have cool experiences outside of this like little world that you're creating.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really cool way to create that loyalty, that trust even, and just really making sure that people know that you care about them.
Totally.
Just reaching across on touching heart to heart. So I think it's a really cool way to structure that out. So for business owners that are spending that 300 to 400K, you work with them, and even people that are spending way higher than that to optimize the spends, right?
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Our team and like what we do, you can really think of it, we're like a CPA for your credit cards, travel advisors, and then points geeks all blended into one. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. We want to be efficient with our spending, the accounting and finance side.
Sure.
We want to have a whole new perspective and opportunity around travel. That's kind of the advising side, and finding the right properties, the right flights. For that Emirates example, the Emirates flight that has the shower in the plane, it's only on certain routes. So if you fly from Miami to Dubai, you're not going to get on that plane. Like, it doesn't operate that way. So if you're not aware of that, then you show up and you get the wrong experience. That's kind of the advising side. And then there's the actual, hey, let's put these points to use and get you some value. So there's kind of this blend of really what we do. But like you said, especially for those high spend business owners, there's a lot of value on the table there.
Yeah, because you guys do Maldives. You can send these trips to me all the time, and it's like making me not want to be here in the studio. Yeah. Like Maldives, I can go to for like 40,000 points or something like that, something crazy. Australia, New Zealand, like all these like cool places. So it is a little distracting. I'm not gonna lie, but it's also incentivizing. And so how do you craft that plan? We were talking about it earlier, looking at it from that like financial advisory side. It's not financial advice, but it's, hey, let's actually build this and construct it for you. So like, let's dive a little bit deeper into that. What are some of the key parts that help define or help change the spend plan, if you will?
If you live in Atlanta, you're flying out of ATL airport, you're going to be flying Delta a vast majority of the time. If we start earning you a ton of American miles, it doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of part of the strategic side there. And that just allows us to get more value out of the points, which means we're getting a total higher return on spend. So our goal, when we're just going hard numbers, you can think of, if you're going to think of this like investing, right? And you're investing in a fund, right? You're competing with like the S&P 500. Okay. So that's going to be like the baseline. You could just someone could just park their money there. So what are you doing to outpace the S&P 500? Why should people invest with you rather than just putting their money there? Our version of that is going to be a 2% cashback card. So if someone has a 2% cashback card, why should they implement this strategy instead? Well, when we optimize the spending and the value on the points, we should be getting around 6 to 10% back every year. So that's the quick math. If you take $1 million in spend, let's say, that means you should be getting $60,000 to $100,000 back a year in the form of travel and experiences. So we're looking to aim to tweak the cards and the way we can use those points to get into that range. And that's how we know we've hit success. That's like our benchmark right there.
Yeah, I think on one of the businesses, you optimized the spend for me, and it was like 2.7 or something like that. I forget the number exactly, but it ended up being about 160,000 points or 140,000 points if I just converted some of those expense items. And so the mine is there, especially for business owners and stuff like that. But the life optimization is key too, because I know, at least here in Miami, you got Delta and you got American, right? So these are like the two hubs. New York, it's JetBlue and United, I think. I don't know. You're probably more the expert on this, but I've had to learn my way through on figuring out these hubs. But I think it's really cool. And so what is actually the best trip that you guys have booked, or maybe the most fun one? If it is the espresso martini in the shower, I mean, that's a pretty cool one.
Yeah.
But is there another one that maybe you did that was like top notch?
So, I mean, I've done a bunch. My business partner, Tommy, is like probably, and I say this not because we're business partners, but he's probably the #1 travel hacker in the world in terms of using points. I mean, he's a full-time nomad. He went around the world to Asia 3 times since like August. So he's going bonkers with this stuff. I mean, it's insane what he's doing. But so that's definitely up there. The Emirates flight. There's the Etihad Apartments as well as a similar type of experience. That's totally ridiculous. And on the kind of experience on the ground, there's really a couple main bucket listers that a lot of our clients really love. One of them being the Maldives. You get these overwater villas. They're $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a night. Sometimes you get status and you get upgraded into even bigger ones. And these are incredible experiences. Some of them, like the Six Senses in the Maldives, will have a restaurant that's underwater, so you can see like the fish swimming and like all this cool stuff. Yeah, so that's cool. That's a bucket lister. Maldives overwater villa, or the other option for overwater is Bora Bora. There's one property in the Caribbean too, but those two would be like places that people are really like, this is a bucket lister. This is gonna be like a $50,000 trip. We gotta do that. The other big bucket lister that we have a lot of clients going to, and Marriott just opened a new resort in Kenya for this, is an African safari.
Oh,
and so this African safari resort in Kenya, it's called the Masai Mara Lodge. So you can use Marriott points for it. It's all inclusive. So you have the safari game tours. You got like all the food. It's crazy.
Really?
The rooms. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Do you know how many points that would cost?
I don't know what it's at right now. The biggest challenge with that one, and so this is kind of the deeper layer of points, isn't necessarily just finding like you having the points for it. It's finding enough dates to get the availability, particularly if you want to leverage a strategy with Marriott called the 5th night free play, which is when you book 4 nights on points, you get the 5th one for free. So at a place where it's like hundreds of thousands of points or tens of thousands of dollars potentially, to get 20% off is a huge saving. So you want to find 5 nights in a row where they have points availability, and that's more of the game for that one than it is with the actual points. But it's probably around 100 to 120,000 points a night for Marriott points. And since not all points are equal, like that is not the same as 120,000 Amex points. Marriott points are worth less. So you got to keep that in mind when you're thinking about how this all works.
They're worth less, not worthless.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
So when it comes to these types of points, I mean, is there a certain like level, just to kind of rebase it a bit, certain level of points that then give people options? Like if, hey, they check their account right now, I have 300,000 Amex points. What's something that I can do?
Mm-hmm.
what would be like a base level to even start looking at points and maneuvering
Sure.
a strategy?
I mean, most people are interested in something that's going to be out of the ordinary, a really cool experience, right? Like they're not just saying, I live in New York, can I go to Cincinnati? Like that's probably, you got that one covered on your own.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that we want to talk about something cool that like you're like, wow, this would be a bucket list. And that's really what I love sharing with people. So let's talk about Europe. That's going to be a big one.
Yeah, I'm going later this year, so let's talk.
Perfect. So a good kind of estimate of what it would take to get to Europe in business or first class would be somewhere between 60 to 80,000 points per person per direction. Sometimes you can find it for less. Sometimes it may be a little more depending on your flexibility and the routes and all that stuff. But and then there's this whole piece of transfer bonuses, which we can loop back to. But that's a good estimate, right? So let's say there's two of you and you're looking at 70,000 points per person per direction, 140,000 points round trip. So 280,000 points. You get two people round trip to Europe. Now, if you had more points, you could do the hotels too. And I'd say, on average, you want to be aiming to spend, depending on the property and the brand, 30 to 50,000 points a night there. So if you wanted to go for a week, that's another, let's call it a couple 100,000 points that you need. And so if you did have between 300 to 500, you could get two people round trip, business class for sure, and potentially like a week of really nice hotels on points as well. So that's a good kind of base layer. If you're going to go to Asia, you'd bump those up a little bit, maybe about 20%. So instead of being base level 60,000, which can happen, it's just more difficult. You'd probably be looking at closer to 75,000 to 100,000 per person per direction.
Okay.
And these are good estimates for business class and sometimes even true first class, which is different from business.
Yeah. So about 780,000 points gets you into Europe and have a whole trip there basically on points. And that's just doing the 1 cent per point thing. That's not the travel hacking that you guys do, right?
No, so 70,000, this would be if you were travel hacking like us.
Okay.
70,000 per person per direction for the flight. So you'd think 140,000
for flights, and then another 500,000 for points, 500 to, or for hotels, 500,000 to 600,000, somewhere in there.
You wouldn't even need that much. You would really need, like if you're doing around 30 to 50,000 points per night for hotels, you could do a week for basically an additional 250,000.
Oh, that's not
so
too
we
bad.
said around 300 for flights, and another 250 for hotels. That brings you about to 500,000. That's a two-person luxury trip to Europe for a week without coming out of pocket. And that would probably ring you in the ballpark of $25,000 in cash value.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you just did the travel hacking point kind of system or whatever, you're saving, what is that, like 18 grand or 20 grand or something
Exactly.
crazy?
Yeah, if you were going to cash those points out and compare it to 1 cent per point. Yeah.
Yeah. That's insane. That's insane. Well, awesome, man. So when it comes to, we'll wrap up the high level bullet points here. For people that are just starting out, some of the best cards are
Totally.
points.
Yeah, so let's talk about just a couple personal, a couple business. I'll give you just a few.
Yeah.
Again, keep in mind it's custom for everybody, but
Rapid fire.
rapid fire. So I really like the Capital One Venture X on both the personal and business side. There's a business card and a personal card because it gets you that 2 points per dollar on non-category bonuses. So really good base value right there. Okay. From there, I'm a big fan of, on the business side, Chase Ink cards, phenomenal. So ad spend, they have the Chase Ink Preferred, that's 3 points per dollar. The Chase Ink Unlimited will get you 1.5 points per dollar on everything else. So I really like Chase points because I like their transfer partners a lot. So it gives you more options. I'm a huge fan of the Chase program. And then if you were going to hop over and get a couple more business, the Amex Business Gold for anyone running ads, you got to have that one baseline.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe the Platinum, depending on other things. And then probably one or two more personal cards. The Amex Gold personal card, phenomenal for anytime you're eating, groceries and dining. You got that covered. And potentially the Chase Sapphire as well. So that would get you the, and that's going to be the Chase Sapphire Preferred, would be the one I'd recommend for most people. So that'll get you covered with the right points. But again, the key here is there's only 4 bank programs that can be converted from banks into airline hotels. It's Chase, Citi, Amex, and Capital One. So if you start earning Bank of America points, Wells Fargo points, TD Bank, US Bank, Key Bank, whatever, any of those other ones, you're not going to have points that you can convert, and therefore they lose their potential value. So the reason I said those cards specifically is because they're all with banks that have those transferable points where you can exchange them. And that is the absolute essential point of this. Otherwise, it's kind of like if I was going to give you 100,000 US dollars or 100,000 Mexican pesos, you take the dollars, right? Because they have more value. It's the same thing with the points.
Yeah, so that's actually, let's dive into that for a sec.
Yeah.
What are the other points for? Because I know on one of my other companies, we have a couple 100,000 Bank of America points because we started the company with that card. What does that even do? What does that get you?
Yeah, so you're going to be looking at trying to basically just use those to either do statement credits, cash out, or they do have travel portals, but most of them, they just give you the fixed value on the points. So you're going to get 1 cent per point, sometimes up to 1.5 as a max, depending on the card and the program.
Okay.
But you're not going to be getting the double, triple, 4x, 5x, sometimes 10x the value on the points like you can if you do the transferring.
Which is the entire game. You want to stick to the ones that you talked about and other ones that are in those banks.
Exactly.
So that way they can actually experience the status lifts, they can experience the cool trips, and they can actually do the transfers.
100%.
Okay, gotcha. Awesome, man. Well, Eli, I know that you work with a lot of great entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners and stuff like that, man. So keep doing what you're doing, man. I'm looking forward to seeing your growth. We're going to link him in the description, guys. I highly recommend, working with him. We're a travel expert like him or his business partner, Tommy. They've helped me with my travel, and, they've done such a great job of actually explaining it instead of just making me go mess up my credit and apply for a bunch of cards. Like, hey, let's actually take a concept.
That's an important piece. Get the right steps so you actually get approved and you get the right credit limits. You're hitting on a good point.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So definitely go check them out. They can follow them just by hitting the links below. But with that said, guys, hope you got value. If you did, share with a friend, family member, 9-to-5er, entrepreneur, whoever, because they need to start tapping into the point system and start living a life worth living. So with that said, guys, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.